Time now, 6:10.
There has been international condemnation of the latest violence in Egypt, where dozens of people have died this weekend.
Supporters of the ousted President Mohamed Morsi are continuing their sit-in at a mosque in Cairo. Let's find out more about what's going on with Middle East analyst Saka Al-Makhadhi. Good to have you with us, Saka.
Good morning.
Good morning. We just heard from our correspondent Yasmin there that it's been calmer overnight, but, to have a cliched saying, is it almost the calm before yet another storm?
It's really difficult to predict what's going to happen now. I think what's surprising is not that this alleged massacre happened, but that it happened so quickly. Now, I think we've got to be clear that the army says that, there are totally different stories here. The army says that what happened was an act of self-defense when these Muslim Brotherhood supporters were allegedly shot down. They say that they weren't even using live rounds, and they dispute the death tolls. But what supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood and independent reporters have been saying is that, around 100 people were killed in the last couple of days. And I think, after General Sisi, who's the head of the army, came out on Wednesday and called for protests to support the army and to give them a mandate to fight terrorism, which is really code for attacking the Muslim Brotherhood, I don't think anyone was surprised by the scale of the atrocities that are alleged to have happened. I think what is surprising is that those killings happened so quickly after his announcement.
We've seen pictures here of some of the latest violence. I mean, it seems to those of us here in the UK that there has been one episode after another over the last couple of years in Egypt. How much more worrying do you think this latest round of violence is compared with the other episodes we've seen?
Well, things are escalating, and they're escalating in a worrying way because Egypt is really becoming so polarised. When the Tamara, the rebel movement, took to the streets in late June calling for the overthrow of President Morsi, no one really believed it was going to happen. The army stepped in and took him out of power and really drove that wedge between the civilian supporters of the secular politicians and the religious supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. And, if democracy had played its course, President Morsi would probably have been voted out of office 3 years down the line from now. He was losing a lot of support, even amongst his own supporters. He was being accused of authoritarian behaviour, and people were really getting quite worried about the way that the country was going.
The concern is now that Egypt, this situation is going to escalate into civil war, especially when you hear leaders calling for their own supporters to come out on the streets. And if you think of the international condemnation, when you hear the likes of John Kerry talk about what's going on, you can see there is concern about the future of the country.
It's very tempting to look at it in that way. I would hesitate about jumping to that conclusion because I think that, at the moment the army has still got a fair amount of support among the people because people are still reeling from the presidency of Mohamed Morsi and the way that he was overthrown, and the army still believes it has a fair amount of legitimacy. But it's not the first time the army's been in power. They were in power for a year after Mubarak was taken out of office, and they overstayed their welcome. The people took to the streets again, demanding that they left and that elections were held on time. And I think that we're starting to see support slipping away, and I think we're going to see that escalating. I think support is going to continue to slip away if the army continues to abuse its powers, and people will not hesitate to take to the streets and force them out of office if they believe that they are fomenting civil war, which is what it seems like they want to do at the moment.
And Naga's mentioning there John Kerry in the United States. What is it that the international community can or should do now, do you think, to try to calm things down and come up with a solution that doesn't involve many more deaths?
Well, I think Egyptians are very angry at the very slow reaction of the international community. John Kerry has still failed to call what happened a coup. It was clearly a coup. It was the military stepping in, in support of the people's demands, but still stepping in and removing a democratically elected president. And I think that America needs to take a very equivocal line on this and call what happened a coup and start acting in Egypt's interests rather than kind of sitting on the sidelines. William Hague made a very important statement when he said that, it's time for the violence to end and for dialogue to start. But I think that Egyptians are waiting for someone to really challenge the power of the army, which of course is the second, it receives the second highest amount of American aid in the world after the Israeli army. So, it really is propped up by the international community, and it has that power.
Okay.
Saka Al-Makhadhi, thank you very much for joining us.
The time is 6:15. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News. Good morning from us. The main stories today.